While I make every effort to broadcast correct information, I'm also still learning. I will double check all my facts, but realize that healthcare is a constantly changing science and art. One doctor or healthcare provider may have a different way of doing things from another. I welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. I take no money from supplement or device companies. By listening to this podcast or reading this blog, you agree not to use this podcast or blog as medical advice or to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Consult your healthcare provider for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast or the website. Under no circumstances shall any guests or contributors to the podcast or blog or any employees, associates, or affiliates of the Boss Body podcast be responsible for damages arising from use of the podcast or the blog. This blog or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing the standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or the blog. What's up, guys? It's Dr. Tim Jackson with another episode of the Boss Body Podcast. EMFs. We've heard the term electromagnetic field. There's controversy over it, but if you understand the science, there's really not a lot of controversy. So we had Nick Penault, the EMF guy, on the show, and that introduced you guys, the listeners and viewers, to the concept of EMFs. So I brought in another expert, Mr. Justin Frandson. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Dr. Tim. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'm impressed with what I've been reading about your work. And can you give us a little background on how you got into this line of work and what brought your attention to EMFs?
You got it. 25 years ago, I started as a performance coach, athleticism performance coach at a Scripps clinic in La Jolla, California, working with amateur and professional athletes. We were doing out-of-the-box training, whole body, whole brain, nerve work for sports performance, stretching, fascia work. And about a decade ago, I saw our athletes breaking down from wearable technology. So one guy in particular, Dr. Tim, had a smartwatch on his wrist, and he's like, Justin, I have pain right at my wrist, and then my whole arm's weak. What's going on? I'm like, get that radiation off your wrist. And then the pain went away, and then his arm started to slowly restore function. And that's when I knew I had to jump into this whole EMF sector.
Absolutely. So can you remind the listeners and viewers what an EMF is?
You got it. It says electromagnetic fields or frequencies. They can be either native or non-native. And so we're built on EMFs and waveforms that are unpolarized. They call them scalar waves. Essentially, a scalar wave is if I drop a pebble in a pond, Dr. Tim, why does the resonance of that wave and the splash of the wave go circular in every direction? Well, the reason is because it's a scalar wave. But the challenge is all non-native EMFs are one-directional waveforms or they don't work. So that's just the foundational difference right out of the gate.
Yeah, and so when you started looking at this back in the day, I imagine, the science wasn't nearly what it is now. I mean, we still have, traditional medical professionals telling people, oh, there's no proof of this, no proof of that. But I last year, I had a conversation with a health coach who she and her husband moved here from North Carolina, and they put a 5G tower right near her child's elementary school. And within 6 months, they had 4, maybe 5 cases of cancer, and there was no family history of cancer. So what do you say to the people that say, oh, that's just conspiracy, tinfoil hat nonsense?
I tell them to wake up and get educated on physics and waveforms and how our universe is made and how we're made and how we're one with our universe. And when you introduce a polarizing one-directional waveform, it messes with the chemistry of our body because, as Dr. Bruce Lipton will say, we have to have the chi in our energy field first to have the chemistry and biology in our body second. So if you have something stressing your energy field, it's going to make a significant change in a lot of different ways, depending on how people are wired or where their weak links are, but it's going to show up. And I can dive into all the different challenges and science behind it. But that's the main thing I would say right out of the gate is just wake up.
Yeah, and as much as I love biochemistry, the saying that I developed over the years is biophysics drives the biochemistry.
Yeah.
So, if we have altered biofields, non-native EMFs, things of that nature, it's going to alter the voltage, and ultimately we're biophysical beings. Like there's a reason we have a negative charge at the cell membrane. And that kind of gets into grounding or adding electrons, right? We want to maintain that anti-inflammatory effect. So what do you do and what do your products do to help mitigate EMFs?
Well, you got to just look to nature for the answer. And just kind of just second what you're saying, our body's a body battery. And Eileen McCusick says it in a great way. She says we get a negative charge from the earth. We get a positive charge from the unpolarized light of the sun. It's not a laser, one directional laser. We breathe in minerals, right? And then we get them from our food, hopefully. And we get the water. In the water, we get the conductivity and hopefully some mineral value as well. But that's how our body battery functions. And if we're missing any of those pieces, you're going to have a chink in your armor that's going to disrupt the voltage gated calcium channels in your body and have a secondary effect of an oxidative stress, which directly affects your mitochondria function. So it literally goes down to the cellular level of how this stuff affects us if and when our body gets decharged.
Absolutely. And if I remember correctly, non-native EMFs also increase peroxynitrite, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean, the
so
list. Yeah. Go ahead.
that's another, if I wanted to make someone feel really bad, I would put some interleukin 6 and TNF alpha and some peroxynitrite in a syringe and inject it. And that'll have you in the fetal position in like 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah. And something that someone would really understand even better, what happens when you're dehydrated? Well, that's what happens is 2.45 gigahertz of the 5G, or actually not 5G, but the cell phone rollout, Wi-Fi rollout is 2.45 billion waves per second, or 2.45 gigahertz, which is the same bandwidth that starts to destructure water in our body. So we're really dehydrating our environment and us with this stuff, causing oxidative stress, mitochondria, challenges. And then you're going to see an array of cognitive, disarray, lack of focus, memory, anxiety, fatigue, stress, headaches, ringing in the ears, bloody noses, lack of sleep is the big one our grounding bags help with. And then you go into level 2, which is non-trauma concussion symptoms, nausea, vomiting, seizures, rashes on the skin, more muscle twitching, bloody noses, ringing in the ears. And you go into level 3 would be those cancer, suicide, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease. And the biggest one now is the lack of fertility. So those are the challenges with losing that coherence between us and our environment. We're made one with our environment because of the coherence, because there's an interplay of unpolarized waveforms and a connection with it as far as the similar speed of the resonances. And that's basically how it is. A Schumann resonance, 7.83 hertz. Well, that's really similar to when we're sleeping, and then performing is just above it from 8 to 12 hertz. So you guys, we got to just start to wake up and understand this physics and interplay between us and creating a coherence with our environment.
Absolutely. And if I remember correctly, some of the studies show that if you test people, have people eat, one food in a low non-native EMF environment, and then you give them a break, have a washout period, have them eat the same food in a high non-native EMF environment, their blood sugar is statistically significantly high.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to second that in a big way, Dr. Tim. I had a client, Newport Beach, California, really wealthy neighborhood, Port Streets, brand new home. Well, not brand new, 10 years or 12 years young of a home, but bombing 3-story home, 4 kids. All of a sudden, after 12 years, the youngest started getting childhood diabetes because he was the smallest out of the group of the family. And literally their house was riddled with EMFs. The lines were cross-wired in the house. They had a high EMF in it from the Wi-Fi, but then they had LED lights with transformers in it, which kicked off a ton of dirty electricity, which normally we just see with solar in a home. You'll see really high dirty electricity with solar as well. But they had all 3 at the highest level, from Edison, their electric company, wiring it poorly, to inside their home. I metered their house. The mom called me over and I'm like, you guys, this house is hot. You got to get out of town. So the mom's like, okay, I'm wearing my new smartwatch and we got to jump on a plane to go to Fiji to kind of get grounded and get out of this area. Well, the kid's blood sugar goes up 200 points when everyone turns on their Wi-Fi on the flight. He gets a bloody nose. The mom's watching and metering this whole thing. Then 3/4 of the way through the flight, it's a long flight, kid's sleeping, half the people wake up, he gets a bloody nose while he's sleeping, glucose spikes another 100 points. Like, there's no scratching your head on this. Exactly what you said. It messes with your glucose.
Yeah, and you mentioned solar panels. I know they're kind of in vogue now. Is there a way to mitigate without breaking the bank the non-native EMFs from the solar panels?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I haven't, and maybe your buddy Nick will know better, but I haven't metered a home with solar on it that's clean, and they've figured out how to ground it. Now, how do we fix it? You talk to Stetzer, he'll give you a bunch of filters, but that's really expensive. It's an electrical challenge, some way, shape, or form within, all the electronics of making that. What we do with our grounding bags is you're going to keep the high levels, and then you're going to create a coherence with just loading up at about 7 of these grounding bags in your home, and then 1 on your bed at least. That'll be the least expensive, but I would encourage everyone to look into rewiring of the stuff, proximity, having batteries off your house, having solar panels not above your bedrooms. There's proximity protocols with this stuff that can help reduce it. There's filters from StetzerElectric.com, but he makes the best meter. Everyone should have a Stetzer Electric meter, $150 or so. Awesome. You plug it in the wall. It tells you how healthy your line is. The most cost-effective, easiest way to see through the walls and see how much static is in that line.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I wanted to speak to you about is with the rewiring of the homes. Do you know of any projects or any efforts being made to wire homes correctly from the get-go?
Oh, I mean, I don't know of projects per se. I know the builders are really making headway with a lot of people. I've been talking with electricians and contractors and getting people to wire homes better, cleaner, ground them out more properly, create kill switches in every bedroom just out of the gate, hardwire when possible. This stuff is really easy to do. I mean, that's the most perplexed thing about it. It's just people are taking shortcuts for profit at our expense of our health and our kids' health. It's just not great, proper business.
Absolutely. I work a lot with clients and patients with mold toxicity. And you know that mold feels like it's being attacked from the non-native EMFs. So it ramps up its production of mycotoxins. And I learned, about a month and a half ago that after the pharmaceutical companies, the next group that donates the largest amount of money is homeowners insurance agencies. And that's how they get around, for example, paying for mold toxicity, water intrusion, because they'll say, oh, we don't see any mold. Well, most mold, the only one you can see is Stachybotrys, unless you have an electron microscope in your eye, you know? And so, I mean, we're like down the street from me, they're building houses, they put up the framework, and they may not come back for 2 to 3 weeks. Meanwhile, it's raining almost every day. So you already have a structure that's, conducive to mold growth. Then you're going to add all this non-native EMF on top of it. And that's just the recipe for disaster.
Definitely. And that's all from Dr. Klinghart's work. Mold, mycotoxins, parasites, they're Lyme, they're all charged by EMF. Dr. Tom Watts at Cellcore will second that with Candida and fungus. And I mean, these are just things, these are proven things from doctors that have been in the lab researching and have, tons of patients that they've seen over the years. You just got to clear this stuff out of your world in order to heal. First, you got to get recharged. You got to recharge your body battery to heal, because it's really tough to heal when you're decharged. And then once you're recharged, you got to start clearing these pathogens or parasites or what have you, and the environmental stressors out, so you have a fighting chance to sustain being able to heal.
So let's talk, I'm friends and colleagues with Dr. Jack Cruz, and he first brought, EMF to my attention back in 2012, I think. But, he talks about he talks a great deal about the dangers of electrical vehicles. Are they good for us or bad for us? What's your take?
Oh, Dr. Tim, you're teeing me up. I could write a dissertation on how bad sitting on a massive battery is for your health. Like, it's not even funny. Let's talk about it. Let's use the grid, the electrical grid, to the exponential level that you're wanting to reduce the usage of, to use that vehicle. Like, it's absolutely stupidity right out of the gate. There is zero common sense with this whole process. They're using coal, cadmium, fossil fuels, precious minerals to mine it. They're upping the amount of coal they're using. They're not lowering it. It's not a net zero on the environment. It's really bad for the miners. It's really bad for us. It's 18% lower testosterone for guys and girls driving electric cars. That's what it's doing to your hormones in your body. 18% lower testosterone. You take a perfectly healthy person, give them a Tesla and a COVID shot, which will be 20% lower testosterone. You're going to take them and make them really sick really quickly. We'll just each of them individually, but hormonally with both of them. Like, which is
crazy. It's like 1 + 1 = 12, with heavy metals. And so
and then it doesn't get more fuel efficient. It's not getting lighter when you're using it. You're filling up our landfills with acid with dead batteries in it. I can keep going on and on this process with this electric car fad. There's not infrastructure for it. There will never be. If about half the US lives in multifamily homes, how in the world are we going to pay for it? There's not even a grid set up for us to even use that much usage. It's just absolutely all ludicrous. We need to stop the insanity.
Absolutely.
Go back to fuel efficient cars, or maybe hydrogen is a great, resource for the environment for the future. But man, it's definitely, electricity is not the answer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And speaking of hydrogen, I have a Brown's gas / molecular hydrogen machine in the other room. And when I'm working at the computer, I'll put the nasal cannula in, and it gets directly into the mitochondria. What are some things, like, obviously you have your grounding bags. I don't know if you're a fan of the Lamb's clothing. I have a few of their products. But supplementally, the things that I've come across are, electrolytes, magnesium, potassium, but also things like fulvic acid, to somewhat mitigate the effects of EMF, since we can't completely avoid them. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, definitely. There's several. Iodine's really good. C60 is really good. When you get the oils going, they're fantastic. We have a lean oil on, we sell all our curated products on athleticism.com, but lean oil is MCT oil, which have medium chain triglyceride, which will help buffer your insulin spiking and crashing. So MCT is great for glucose levels. And then energy bites, we're going to be adding those onto our site really soon. Chlorella, there's spirulina in the morning, chlorella at night, and just load up on that. You're going to start to see some glucose levels normalize with those as well. I like hydrating our bodies through silica or diatomaceous earth. Silica, I get it from Alphavedic, ALFAVEDIC.com, Alphavedic. Dr. Bear Lando makes a homeopathic cell salts. You can get your birthday cell salt, and then you could get the silica cell salt to help your fascia stay hydrated from the stressors of EMF, and then also from the barium from the chemtrails that are dehydrating us. These are the levels of proper nutrition that I think everyone should look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So between undergrad and my doctorate program, I was a personal trainer. And one thing that I noticed, because it was a personal training studio, it wasn't like a public gym, but most of the clients were professionals. And some of the ones, in fact, the ones who worked the hardest often saw the least results, because at that time it was, nutrition plus exercise equals health. But now we know nothing could be further from the truth, especially the average umbilical cord of a newborn today has between 250 to 300 well-documented carcinogens. And that's just the carcinogens. And they haven't even lived a day on the planet yet. So, if we have things like that going on, I hear people say, oh, well, traditional doctors saying, well, we have these built-in detoxification systems. Well, that's true. I mean, I have a gas tank in my car, but that doesn't mean I can drive from here to Canada without putting more in. You got to replenish it, right?
Oh,
And
and
so,
change that oil, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you brought up a good topic. I had Dr. Christine Schaffner, who used to work with Dr. Klinghardt on the show, and she was talking a great deal about fascia. And, originally, so I started out the first 2 years after I graduated doing outpatient orthopedics. And so we would do the instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization and the active release technique. But now we have a much better understanding of fascia. Can you talk about the role of fascia and how it plays a significant role in the body in terms of cell to cell communication?
Definitely. Well, Dr. Christine and I speak the same language. She's brilliant in articulating waveform resonances, and for us understanding that that's the future of really health and wellness. And for all these practitioners out there to start to understand it and look towards that invisible environment affecting us. But our fascia is the framework for our entire body. That's the conductivity. That's our structure in our body, literally. That's where everything is held. All the information is held in the fascia. So without that fascia being hydrated, you're going to have a lot of challenges with bottle functions and then cognitive functions. The list goes on and on. The fascia is literally what our body consists of in such a big way. It's our intelligence matrix, communication lifeline in our body.
And that explains. So back in the day, I was actually at an active release technique course, and one of the guys taking the course with me also did fascial stretch technique, or FST, whatever it stands for. But he talked about how he had a lot of patients and clients who, when he did this technique on them, they would have an emotional reaction. And I just thought it was hocus pocus at the time. But have you seen something similar?
Oh yeah. Do you know Gary Lineham's work?
Mm-mm.
Highly recommend you check him out. He's got an incredible system that he feels the fascia moves in counter rotation. So you rotate your body one way and the head rotates the other way. And then you breathe and you can release so much emotional trauma through the breath work. And that is fantastic. And he taught me about the silica in the body. And this is a huge, huge part of healing. You got to clear out these emotional holding patterns. You got to clear toxicity of stuck EMF out of your biofield, or generational stuck toxicity in your biofield, to allow the circuitry of fascia to work its wonders.
How do you spell his last name?
Lineham, Gary, Garry, Lineham. Yeah, Human Garage. Yeah. What's that?
Linham?
Yes, I believe. Line or Line. Yeah, I forget. Lineham, I believe. Human Garage is his company. Yeah. So he's got a huge following. He's giving some incredible information and resources on how everyone can start to self-heal themselves and regenerate that, upregulate the nervous system, clear these emotional holding patterns just by literally hugging and counter rotating yourself. And you do that every day for 30 days. He gives you the entire program. It's absolutely brilliant.
That's awesome. I'll definitely have to check that out. In terms of emotional healing, trauma work, in the nervous system, so sympathetic dominance, fight or flight, obviously we can't heal anything if we're in a fight or flight state. And can you touch on how EMFs sort of keep us in that perpetual fight or flight state?
Yeah, they take us into from a parasympathetic to sympathetic nervous system, like instantly. That's the attack that our body feels, and the chemistry changes right away. And so if you're in a sympathetic, which is fight or flight state, you're not going to be able to heal. You're not in flow state. You're not in abundance state. You're not grounded. You're literally in a protective mode that you should be just in it for a very short period of time. And, if any, for that matter, right now, there's no real reason for us to be in it. So, those are for emergency situations. But if we're 24/7 under duress from EMF in our home, in these electrical boxes that we're calling homes, our bodies are going to just get overrun. You're going to have adrenal fatigue, and then we're going to start to break down in all these different ways. So it's really important to start and that's what grounding will do, is help get you back into that parasympathetic rest and digest and reset mode. And you can do it through breath work. You can do it through grounding. You can do it through a restorative pose, like just lay down on your back with your feet up at 90 degrees, and you pull all the blood back into your stomach. I call that the restorative pose. There's so many ways you can get out of that fight or flight mode. You can do it through binaural beats and just literally, if your breath work isn't strong enough to pull you out of it, there's other ways to help.
Yeah, I just ordered a device called Hoolest, Hoolest, and it accesses the vagus nerve just posterior to the sternocleidomastoid in the neck. And a friend of mine is a chiropractic neurologist and a nurse practitioner, and that's all he does is brain rehab, stroke rehab, traumatic brain injury, and he really likes it. So it should be here tomorrow. I also do the TENS unit on the tragus and the earlobe of the left ear. And one thing I've learned too, so for example, benzodiazepines, one of the reasons they're so hard to get off of is because, well, one, they downregulate GABA receptors, and then you get the glutamate surge and GABA goes down, but they also lower acetylcholine, and that's why they increase the risk of Alzheimer's. And the vagus nerve is lined with acetylcholine receptors. And so you literally can't turn on the anti-inflammatory reflex, and you can't balance your mood. I know the TENS unit works because every time after I use it, I have a bowel movement.
Isn't that crazy? Because when you're stressed, you're not gonna go to the bathroom. Right. And that's the whole thing I've noticed with myself. Like, I'm working my ass off all week long, and then finally I get to the weekend, I get to rest, and then all of a sudden everything gets out. That's not a great way for longevity. Like, we gotta get into these parasympathetic modes and have that and be in the flow state, not just fight or flight. And let's just ram through all this stuff during the work week. We're all, have that challenge, I think, or seen that in a lot of ways. But that's wild. Like that cue right there, Dr. Tim, is exactly the awareness that I want people to start to cue in on. Does your breath change? Does your bowel movement change? Like, how do you feel? Do you feel foggy? Do you have more energy? Are you yawning? Are you tired? Like, these are the certain cues that you have to look for, and practitioners look for when they're working on or treating someone, or they're even just checking in on their pulse point to see how they feel, and get out of this meta universe where a watch is going to tell you how you feel. That's just ridiculous.
I know some of the devices come out now, and I guess the thing to do these days is to have a subscription where you don't just buy the device. You've got to pay, like $75 a month, because there are going to be updates. But, you got to have your phone on. And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't like that. So this device I just ordered, there's no phone involved in it. There's no laptop involved in it. You just 5 minutes on each side, twice a day, 3 times a day, max. And it's supposed to truly help.
Cool.
But in terms of doing breath work in an environment where there's a lot of non-native EMFs, can the breath work still be beneficial?
Of course, definitely. Yeah, I would hedge to the Shaolin monks, and I met one time. He worked on me, and I said, "Hey, are you affected by the 5G towers and all the towers?" And he said, "No." And they're in a different world where all they do is breath work, and so their energy is so strong they can transmute stuff just on their own, so
Right.
they're not as affected by it. But net, when you're building your life force, you're going to start to develop more strength and resiliency, and subconsciously maybe create some type of a transmutation and a coherence between whatever's stressing you out. And that's, I think, innately of how your body just starts to heal. So yes, all the good that you can do is going to help balance out the bad.
And in terms of turning off routers at night, yeah, and I know you mentioned distance. So the inverse square law, the further you are away from something, the less of an impact it's going to have on you. Um, what role does turning off a Wi-Fi router at night? Because I get people, you'd be surprised how much some people fight me on this. And I'm like, are you coding in the middle of the night? Okay, well then why do you need it on? Unless, I don't really agree with this, but some people have their house alarms tied into the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So I can somewhat understand that. But any comment on that?
Definitely, you gotta just shut it down. I mean, that's the big thing. When you're protected, when you're connected above, you're protected. So stop living in fear, even with alarms and stuff. And you can get them that aren't Wi-Fi connected; they're just hardwired. So definitely turn off all your wireless devices in your home. Charge them out of your rooms. This is 101 EMF stuff. I've gone to the extent to hardwire a lot. And then also we have a timer on our outlet that turns off the Wi-Fi when we're sleeping, turns off the electricity in the electrical panel to all the bedrooms when we're sleeping. There's simple things that you could do for pretty inexpensive that can help you deal with this stuff. But no one can argue that a $9 outlet timer from the hardware store is going to break the bank. I mean, let's just time that stuff so when you're sleeping, your body can get into these deep delta or theta brainwave states. Remember, when we're sleeping, we're 1 or below 1 to 8 hertz or waves per second. That's how low and slow our brainwave state is. These are 2.45 billion waves per second. 5G, 60 to 90 billion waves per second. The Schumann resonance, that healing pulse of the earth, 7.83 hertz or waves per second. We're one with the earth. We're 10 zeros away from these guys, these cell phones and all the wireless stuff. We got to get back and get our living quarters as close and low and slow to the Earth's resonance as possible.
Absolutely. So one thing I like to ask all the guests on the podcast is, what's something
you know today that you wish you would have known 10 to 12 years ago?
Yeah, that getting grounded by nature is probably one of the biggest pillars of health, and it's free.
Absolutely. So we're going to put your contact information up. We're going to put the links to your products up. And do you have any special way, I guess, through your website for people to contact you if they're interested in a consultation on this topic?
Yes, athleticism.com, spelled athletic, ISM for those who have trouble spelling, or emfrocks.com. You can get our grounding bags there. You can get our Faraday bags there. Actually, you can get them on both sites, but there's an info at those that email will be forwarded to me, and we can help out in any way, shape, or form. This is a huge time where I want to help everyone and more people than we've helped in the last 25 years. So please reach out. This will be one of the best answers to a deeper night's sleep that everyone's been looking for, these grounding bags. Dr. Rodney White, one of your colleagues, ended up testing it 60% deep sleep for him for 3 months straight. We have a study on that. So it works. We sell these through doctor clinics all around the country. So everyone will benefit from getting grounded by nature. And when you're not inside, get outside, go get barefoot, get into a body of water.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Thanks for coming on the show. And hopefully we can have you back on again in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Dr. Tim. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you.